Hello and welcome to the Microbe Discovery Project's live author hangout. I'm James Ockenden, a volunteer in Hong Kong and your host for today's fundraising event. Thank you very much for joining. We have a very special guest with us live online, Elisabeth Tova Bailey, the author of the much-loved book, The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. Hello, Elisabeth, are you there?
Yes, hello, James. Very happy to be here.
Okay, well, welcome. Now, Elisabeth is going to read from her book and answer your questions from her home in Maine, USA. Elisabeth has kindly agreed to do 4 unique live readings to cover every time zone from Auckland to Oslo to London and both US coasts. And this will be the 3rd of the 4 live hangouts this weekend. And right now we are on the topic of teeth, tentacles and slime. So just to... Elisabeth loves the slime. Just to quickly explain the fundraiser, your donations today will support the Microbe Discovery Project, which is an initiative pioneered by ME/CFS patients themselves in support of Dr. Ian Lipkin's research into this disease. Dr. Lipkin is a world-renowned scientist, well known for his work on SARS here in Hong Kong, on the current Ebola outbreak, and the ME/CFS community is very lucky to have him working on the ME/CFS research. The patient group has already raised more than $150,000 US, but we need more funds to move Dr. Lipkin's research forward. So to donate during or after the show, please do visit bit.ly/donate to Dr. Lipkin, and 100% of your donation goes directly to Columbia University, earmarked to Dr. Lipkin's ME/CFS research project. So now for Elisabeth to read from her book for session 3, Teeth, Tentacles and Slime. Take it away, Elisabeth.
Thank you, James. I'm delighted to be giving this series of readings over 24 hours. It's cool to be able to get all the time zones in the world. I fully support Dr. Lipkin's Microbe Discovery Project. It has so much potential for future diagnosis and treatment options for ME/CFS. And it's this kind of brilliant research by Dr. Lipkin and other researchers that give patients hope each day. For this 3rd section, I will be reading from later in the book, and we'll read a little, answer some questions, read a little, and have a few last questions. For those of you who don't know this true story, during 1 year of the years I was bedridden with ME/CFS, a friend came to visit and brought a wild forest snail she had found in the woods. She left it in a flower pot by my bedside, and I ended up observing the snail for an entire year. So for this session, I am going to read from Chapter 7, Thousands of Teeth. In the 4th century BC, in the history of animals, Aristotle noted that snail teeth are sharp and small and delicate. My snail possessed around 2,640 teeth, so I'd add the word plentiful to Aristotle's description. The teeth point inward so as to give the snail a firm grasp on its food. With about 33 teeth per row, and maybe 80 or so rows, they form a multi-toothed ribbon called a radula, which works much like a rasp. This explained my snail's nodding head as it grated away at a mushroom. It also explained the odd squareness of the holes I had discovered in my envelopes and lists. As the front row of teeth gets worn down, a fresh new row is added at the back, and the radula slowly moves forward, being completely replaced over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. Radulae are adapted to a particular snail's diet and can be an identifying characteristic of a species. With only 32 adult teeth, which had to last the rest of my life, I found myself experiencing tooth envy toward my gastropod companion. It seemed far more sensible to belong to a species that had evolved natural tooth replacement and to belong to one that had developed the dental profession. Nonetheless, dental appointments were one of my favorite adventures, as I could count on being recumbent. I could see myself settling into the dental chair, opening my mouth for my dentist, and surprising him with a human-sized radula. And I'm going to read a little bit from Chapter 8, telescopic tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
When my snail was foraging for food or grazing on a mushroom, its tentacles quivered and twitched continuously. They stretched toward desirable smells, but were instantly retracted from anything the least bit offensive. The snail could move its tentacles individually in nearly any direction, up to a 90-degree angle, sweeping them slowly back and forth and up and around, just as a boat underway in the dark swings its searchlights about to look for navigational marks. It was its tentacles, which hold smell and taste receptors, that gave my snail its look of intelligence and purpose. So critical are they to a snail's survival that if injured, they can be regrown, just as a starfish can regrow an arm. Using the taste buds on its lower tentacles, my snail could distinguish between salty, bitter, and sweet flavors. The thousands of chemoreceptor cells along its upper tentacles were similar to those inside a human nose. Snails see the world through smell, the way many insects do, and they can detect aromas from a few airborne molecules. In its native habitat, my snail determined the source of a scent and the distance from which it wafted based on wind speed and direction. There was no woodsy fragrance blowing through my room, and the snail, especially while it lived in a pot of violets, must have been surprised by the kaleidoscope of unfamiliar smells, the scent of humans, human food, tea, soap, paper, and ink.
Yes, well, it must have been a confusing time for the snail at first. So that's fascinating. The snail sees the world through the smell primarily. Did you yourself begin to sort of try and look at the world through that very strange way yourself?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've never been asked that question. No, I think as humans, we mostly use smell either because there's something we absolutely love we're smelling or something we really don't like. And a lot of the time we don't pay that much attention to the basic smells around us unless they're one extreme or the other. Mm. But with Thanksgiving coming up, there'll be some good smells around soon.
Yeah, it's very hard to navigate with them, I think, because they don't travel in straight lines, as you said. So the snail has some remarkable cognitive stuff going on there, I guess, to be able to see with smell. Do you still keep company with snails today? Do you miss having your snail around?
I do miss having a snail to watch, but I haven't wanted to keep one in captivity really again since that 1 year. I've occasionally in the summer will have a couple if I'm just doing. I've been doing a little bit of filming and photography to get some images, but I don't like to keep them in captivity, so I release them very quickly back to the wild.
Yes.
And I don't expect to have them again. I'm sort of through doing that, but
yeah. Yes, I did want to ask you about that. Is keeping the snail in captivity? It's obviously away from its habitat, and it's got these strange smells around him and or her. And did you ever feel that you should send the snail back into the wild, or enjoy his freedom?
Well, I don't want to give away the plot in the book, so
I
think I won't answer that question.
Okay.
You have to read the book. Yes.
Okay. Well, we have another question
Okay.
that's come in. The book has a very unusual combination of natural history and medical humanities. Could you talk about that and how you connected those two threads?
Yes, that was really an interesting process in the book because I had these two separate science strands going, the backdrop of the illness and all this really cool natural history information, and I wasn't sure how to link them. And I was also, I think anytime you write a book, you're trying to understand something, and I was trying to come to terms with why illness came into my life, why I had to be the one that got ill, because of course no one wants that to happen. I'm also an atheist, so I was trying to find a way to understand from the perspective of an atheist, how you accept a bad thing like illness in your life.
Mm.
And I was halfway through writing the book when I read an article, actually in the New Yorker, about how pathogens were involved in speciation. In other words, without pathogens, we wouldn't have snails and humans and cats and dogs and other birds and fish.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the genetics are impacted by certain types of bacteria, viruses, and that actually shaped us and has turned each animal into the sort of animal over the long time period of evolution.
Mm.
So I realized halfway through my book that if it weren't for pathogens, I wouldn't be a human and I wouldn't be writing a book. And that seemed really amazingly critical to what I was doing, and it allowed me to connect to the snail. Without a bad pathogen in my life, I wouldn't have connected to the snail, even though it took other pathogens to create a snail and eventually create a human. So I was finally able to connect those threads, which was really, for me, very exciting. And I think it's an interesting connection also for the medical world, and I'll talk about that, I think, in a later question, because I think it makes the book very readable by medical professionals and medical researchers because of that connection there.
Yes, yes. Wow. So it's really a story of acceptance as well on your side.
Yes, it was a little. Yeah, at that point I was like, well, I could not be a human and not get sick, or I could be a human who unfortunately got sick. So.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. All right. So perhaps now then we'll move on to the next reading at that point.
Okay.
So if you'd like to go ahead with that, and we'll talk about the tentacles and the slime.
Yes, we did the tentacles. So the slime, I'm going to be reading from Chapter 10, Secret Recipes. And it's not so much that I love slime, it's more that when I started to write this book, it became clear fairly soon that I was going to have to write a whole chapter about slime, which I thought was pretty kind of unusual.
Yes.
But it turned out to be quite interesting. So here we go. Slime is the sticky essence of the gastropod's soul, the medium for everything in its life. Locomotion, defense, healing, courting, mating, and egg protection. Nearly 1/3 of my snail's daily energy went into slime production. And rather than making a single batch of all-purpose slime, my snail had a species-specific recipe for each of these needs and for different parts of its body. It could adjust the ingredients just as a good cook would to meet a particular occasion. And in a catastrophic accident in which a snail is squashed, it can release a flood of life-saving medicinal mucus packed with antioxidants and regenerative properties. Pedal mucus, which is what a snail uses to locomote, is an incredible adhesive. It explains my snail's ability to cross over soft mosses, proceed upside down along a leaf, or sleep oblivious to gravity high on the side of the glass terrarium, or even dangling from the tip of a fern frond. Before the snail's arrival at my bedside, the concept of sealing art had absorbed my attention. Lying in bed, I would concoct in my mind various methods for safely affixing horizontal images to the white surface above me. Perhaps slime glue was the solution. The idea of being coated from head to toe with such a slippery substance was unsettling to me. I thought that my snail would feel an equal aversion to sunning itself on a hot, sandy beach. Evolution had led to our contrasting skin anatomies, and as a result, to our opposite fears. And now a section from the chapter Colonies of Hermits, chapter 11. When I thought of the distance my snail could travel in relation to its size, my own immobility was stark in comparison. My life was becoming nearly as solitary as my snail's. As the months drifted by, it became harder for friends to give up weekend time to make the long drive to visit. There were many days when I saw a caregiver for just a half hour at mealtimes, and I was becoming more and more cut off from the world. My bed was an island within the desolate sea of my room, yet I knew that there were other people homebound from illness or injury, scattered here and there throughout rural towns and cities around the world. As I lay there, I felt a connection to all of them. We, too, were a colony of hermits.
Mm. Well, it's obviously a powerful metaphor for your condition and all the sufferers around the world. So, but when you say you felt a connection, do you feel, was it like an understanding, or do you think there's any further connection?
I think that I had to. No, I think it just helped me to think when I was that isolated and that ill and bedridden to keep in mind that there are other people around the world in similar situations, even if I didn't know them. It sort of just helped me feel a little bit less alone, imagining that reality. Yeah. Which does exist. So.
Yeah. There seems to be quite a lively network of people, of sufferers of ME and CFS, as well as obviously other serious diseases. Do you think the patient community in ME CFS is a reasonably active one? Do you think it could do more to sort of bring that colony of hermits together?
It's a very challenging illness in which to do that. I mean, I think, for instance, this fundraising, these sessions, there are many patients involved in this work from their rooms and beds, and so we all do try to help. I think the book it's been wonderful to me that the book has reached both healthy readers and ill readers, and the patients that have written me actually, there's a couple interesting things about that. One thing is I get emails in which they say that I have put into words the experience that they have had, but which they had not been able to convey to friends and family, and they'll actually Xerox pages from the book to share with friends and family, and that's very moving for me. It's also quite moving to have gotten some email reader letters from medical professionals who tend to feel they're invulnerable, and then they get ill, and they have written me letters saying, I had no idea what patients really go through until I got ill myself. And that's also been quite moving.
Yeah. Okay. You talked about acceptance earlier, and I just wanted to bring up the quote from the Huffington Post, which reviewed the book and said, the sound of a wild snail eating is an exquisite meditation on the restorative connection between nature and humans. And it really is a meditation. If you read the book, it's a very unique form of meditation, watching a snail probably, but I just wondered if you had any experience with meditation or anything like that as a result of your snail experience.
I think meditation is good for everyone who can do it. It's hard to do. I can't say I'm very good at it, especially alone. It's easier to group, which I'm not usually in. So, but it is good, and I think the snail provided that for me because it was moving slowly, but it was alive. It was a really wonderful thing. It had quite a calming effect. And there's a lot of research out there that actually shows that the natural world and connections to animals can improve the immune system and have that kind of an effect.
Yes, people say that just petting a dog can actually improve your immune system. So I wonder if the snail has the same.
Yes.
Just watching a snail.
Oh, I think it did, especially once it was in a terrarium. It was a very lovely thing to be looking at.
Yeah. Obviously, it cheered you up a lot, the snail. But do you think it actually did have any physical effect on your health?
Just that looking at any natural scene is calming, and they have shown that chemically, doing immune tests on people that walking in the woods can be calming. It doesn't actually cure you, but it's a peaceful experience.
Okay. We have a question come in from someone who's a ME/CFS sufferer asking if there is an audiobook version coming out, because the person finds reading actually quite difficult and tiring. And I think this is a common experience with ME/CFS sufferers.
It is. It's. I still have a hard time actually reading much. I'm happy to say that an audiobook has just actually come out in the last few weeks. It's been a long time coming, but it's narrated by Renee Rodman, who's a wonderful narrator and actor, and it is available on Amazon and Audible.com.
Okay. Oh, how did he feel about? Did you get to meet the narrator?
Renee, I haven't gotten to meet her, but we've had some phone conversations.
Right. I wonder how it was to read a book about a snail. Must be very, I don't know, slightly more interesting than, I don't know. Anyway, I think we are out of time for this session. So this is the penultimate session. So thank you very much, Elisabeth.
We have one more session coming up at 4 o'clock.
That's right. We'll be back in 4 hours. Is it?
That will be the last session, and
the final session.
It will be on snail hibernation, eating, and snail romance.
That's right. We're going to get some romance in for the final session for a Saturday night, so that should be good. And so I thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will either come back for the next session, the final session, or invite your friends. Just to remind you, you've been listening to Elisabeth Tova Bailey, author of The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating, in support of the Microbe Discovery Project, fundraiser for Dr. Lipkin. If you haven't had a chance to donate to this important ME/CFS research, please do so on the Columbia University link we've been showing on the slides there. Thank you very much for joining, and we hope to see you later.
Yes, so, goodbye. See you in 4 hours.
Goodbye from both of us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.